Troconis family clearly putting the blame on FOTUS. This is a complex case, so let's break it down with some legal analysis. Joining me now, Raymond Hassett, an attorney with Hassett George. He's also a former federal prosecutor, so thank you so much for being here. It is complicated, so let's break down the charges real quick. A conspiracy to commit murder was the biggest charge against her, carried a sentence of up to 20 years, but the judge suspended it after 14 and a half. So what does that mean?
So that means that the judge gave her essentially a break and saying, I'm going to impose this on you, and if you make mistakes during your probationary period, or if something happens when you get out, you can have the full sentence imposed upon you. But she really only has to serve 14.5%, I believe he said 14 years and a half, so 6 months additional. Of that, because of this being a crime of violence, there is typically around an 85% time in which she will be serving that time under the regulations of the Department of Corrections. They have good time discounts. She can also apply for parole. She can also have other programs that are applied to her that are become available, such as getting education and things of that nature. So she'll be out considerably less than 14.5 years. I was impressed with Judge Randolph, how he went through the entire analysis of what his thinking was and how he came up with a very cogent decision based upon taking into consideration everything, including historical perspectives of what sentencing includes, as well as taking into consideration the history and the character of the defendant, and as well as listening to all the impact statements, which were very, very compelling. If you've gone to one of these sentencings, you can see they're very exhausting, they're very draining, and to be able to sit through that, I give Judge Randolph a lot of credit, and I think he did a very good job today also explaining to the general public what the process is all about, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there.
It's not an easy decision for him. He has sentencing guidelines. She was facing up to 45 years. That was the maximum. He clearly went well below that, but he gets to use his discretion too. You noted the victim impact statements we heard from both sides. The kids by far was the most compelling. The first time we heard from kids on both sides, the Dulos side, we also heard from Michelle's 17-year-old daughter as well. She got emotional. So how much did the victim impact statements weigh on the judge, you think? Do you think he already knew what he was going to do prior to this hearing?
Most judges have a sense of what they're going to do before they come out. However, the impact that you can get from a particular individual, especially from a child, or I believe the impact that came from what her son said about how he'll never be able to prove himself to his mother, that is a very human response, and sometimes we forget about these children that were involved and how they're going to be carrying this baggage around for life. And he indicated that he weighed all of that. What he also didn't indicate, and I believe he did though, is he looked at other similar fact patterns, and of course there's no identical fact pattern to this, but similar charges in which something of a similar nature has occurred, and tried to figure out a range, because the justice system and the judicial system really requires judges to be consistent, be transparent and consistent in what they do. And I think to the extent that he gave the 14.5 years, I think that falls right in about what defense people were thinking he would do today.
And he said he was taking into consideration the nature of the offense and the history and character of this particular offender. Now, prior to this crime, Michelle had a clean criminal history. There are a lot of character references today about how she was kind to people, the disabled. She worked with horses and helped people recover from different challenges throughout life. So do you think all that played a factor as well for him? And also her age, 49 years old, so now 14 and a half brings us to 63 she will be when she gets out, versus she could have been dying in prison. So this is a victory in that sense for Michelle.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis. However, I think that the sentence, if you take it into consideration, is appropriate for what she's been charged with. Remember, she's been charged to have conspired to commit the murder. There was no evidence whatsoever that she actually did the murder. Did she help clean up afterwards? Did she, Judge Randolph indicated a number of things, helped dispose of evidence. There was DNA found on some of the evidence, her DNA. Did she help cover up by listening for the phone to ring and answering it and things of that? So she covered up, but the question becomes, it's not like she did the actual murder, but she did an overt act in furtherance of the murder, which is why it's a conspiracy to commit the murder. It's slightly different, and people may think, well, you're parsing words, but the involvement of what she did, I think, is representative in the sentence that was imposed today.
Now, her attorney has already said he plans to appeal this. I want to get your thoughts on that. Also, so 14 and a half years, that's the maximum at this point. There's nothing she can do good behavior-wise to get out. And initially the defense attorney was asking for probation only. Obviously, he was shot down in that regard.
Yeah, that wouldn't have, I think that would have shocked everybody, myself included.
Is that typical to be asking for something like that?
He knows he's fighting an uphill battle, and he's trying to set a floor of something and trying to get somewhere in the middle. And I think defense counsel did a good job today. Both the attorneys are very well-respected attorneys. They're knowledgeable, they're experienced. I think they did, in light of what they had today, I think they did a good job. And some of the evidence was very compelling. Or some of the testimony, I should say, that came forward today was very compelling. I was actually fascinated by the fact that when Michelle got up to say something, I was of the opinion that she wouldn't say anything, but she crafted, maybe in conjunction with her defense counsel, but she crafted a very good statement that was along the lines of, I am so sorry about what happened to Jennifer. She didn't say anything about her culpability. She didn't say anything because she can't. She's got appeals pending, so anything that she says, if it indicates that she participated, would really prejudice her ability on her appeals. And if it's retried, in other words, if it's, let's say the appeal wins and it's remanded for a retrial, anything that she says at this point in court could be used against her. So she had to make a very careful statement. She made that statement. I thought it was a genuine statement of sorrow as to what happened to the family. And I think that may have played a little bit of a role too in the court's decision.
And judges do take that into account. They watch the demeanor of these people. She was very emotional, listening. She seemed very present, listening to the kids as they were delivering the remarks. A lot of it critical against her. She didn't seem too rigid in that sense. Do you think she was prepped in that sense? Do you think the defense told her, appear like a human, and maybe that will serve you some favors?
Well, I think any defense attorney is going to say how you present and how you appear is important to everybody. Mm-hmm. It's important to the media. It's important to the defense. It's important to the jurors when they're there. So yeah, that's a very important thing. But today I thought she presented as well as she could in light of the circumstances. Yeah. She doesn't have a criminal history. She has done a lot of things that, and this is the first time we've heard a lot of the charitable and the good that she has done throughout the course of her life to help people that are disabled and special needs. Mm-hmm. And I think that the defense did a very nice job today in presenting her as the person that she was known to many, including many members of her congregation, her church, that came forward and testified today. I said testified, but I'm speaking on her behalf, the character letters. Again, I think in light of everything that occurred today, I think that Judge Randolph, I think it was appropriate what he did today. It
wasn't an easy case for the defense, though. They were up, first of all, Schornhorn, he took the case after another defense attorney maybe made some missteps that he alluded to today. For instance, Michelle Troconis spoke openly with police, and that's why they got her for saying conflicting statements. Perhaps that was a mistake there. What other missteps did you notice?
Well, I think that initial step, I'm sure the defense counsel believed her and didn't think that she had anything to do with it. But unfortunately, the three statements that she gave to the police ended up being inconsistent with each other and inconsistent with the facts. And ultimately, I think that was probably the most telling thing that the jury rather, relied upon in making their decision. So that's what he was referring to. If we all know that you have the right to remain silent when police contact you or speak to you, everybody knows it and everybody can recite it, but everyone forgets it when they're questioned by a police officer. So as a defense attorney, that's one of the things that we tell you. That's your constitutional right. I think that's what he was referring to mostly. And with respect, I think she had a good enough grasp of the English language, and I think the jury could see that. So I'm not sure how that played out in the jury room with respect to whether she needed a translator or not. You can hear that everybody today that gave a statement regarding their knowledge of her in the past has always said she spoke English when they spoke. So that was kind of compelling. Yeah. But again, one thing I do want to mention is that Judge Randolph sat through the whole trial. He saw the admissible evidence. He saw the inadmissible evidence that was kept out from the jury. So he got to see a whole picture. And when he indicated that in his statements that he can rely upon evidence that's inadmissible at trial, to get a perception or a feeling or an understanding of what happened that maybe the jury didn't. He relied upon what the jury stated when he gave his sentencing comments, which is very important. But you got to remember, in the back of his mind, he could also have additional evidence too. So again, I think kudos to the court for coming to a conclusion that actually makes a lot of sense.
He said the jury made logical and reasonable inferences based on 3 key facts. Let's talk about that real quick. When Fotis Dulos allegedly killed his estranged wife, Michelle never asked where he was that morning, never even inquired. Also, he left his phone with her at the time he was allegedly committing this act, and she answered, crafting an alibi for him, and then she was seen on video helping him discard the evidence, which was the big one as well. What did the judge mean by these reasonable and logical inferences? Was he siding with the jury?
No, what he was saying was that the law allows the jury to make reasonable and logical inferences. In other words, if it snows and you see tracks in the backyard, you know that somebody walked through your backyard after the snow fell. That's a reasonable and logical inference, right? Circumstantially, people do that all the time. We rely on that when we discuss things with each other. However, what he's saying is that they relied upon reasonable and logical conclusions that they could have grasped from the evidence that came directly from the defendant herself. And when he indicated that, he said, listen, I'm not here as a judge to reopen, revisit, or to analyze any of what the jury did specifically. I'm here to impose a fair and appropriate sentence. In light of what they could have found, this is what the sentence is that I'm going to impose. But what he did indicate is that he felt that the jury did a pretty thorough job in representing their obligation and their duty to Michelle Troconis, and as a result, he imposed a sentence accordingly.
The Dulos family likely will not like this sentence. They wanted the maximum initially. Michelle was facing 50. A count was dropped earlier today, so I brought it down to 45. But one of the children asked for 10 years per kid that has to live now without a mother and a father. What would you say to the Dulos children who might be looking at the sentence and saying, this is not justice?
Yeah, well, victims are allowed to do that. They're allowed to say that they don't feel it's justice. But again, I think we go back to the foundation of sentencing, and we look back at some of the history that the judge referenced today. What are the purposes? What are we looking to do, impose? Well, obviously, punitive is not the sole purpose of it, but it is a major purpose, is to punish somebody and send a general deterrent out to the rest of society. You can't act in this way. So that I get. But we see this often in cases where someone says, even in a personal injury case, where someone will get injured and they'll say, oh, you know, I should get paid $1,000 for every week I've been injured, or my permanency in the future. And it's just a way to get to a number that people are trying to get you to. So that happens regularly. However, I understand, and if I was one of those children, I probably would be saying the same thing, but the judge has to weigh, remember the scales of justice, weigh what really occurred, what happened, and what would be an appropriate sentence for this woman who's had, to date, prior to this, had a flawless criminal history, nothing. She was respected. We don't know what happened to her around this time.
Right.
And that was all weighed together by the court.
And also the judge weighs, will this person be a repeat offender? Does she pose a danger to society? We want to send it out now to our reporter who's been following this case, the trial, 6 weeks of the trial, from start to finish. So Julia LeBlanc, you were in the courtroom when that sentence came down. What was the mood like? What were your takeaways?
Hi there. Good afternoon to you both. To be honest, it was kind of hard to have a view, at least, of Michelle Troconis as that sentencing was coming down, because that courtroom was packed, as it has been all day today, filled with friends and family members of Michelle Troconis, and on the other side of things, behind the prosecution, filled with the friends and family of Jennifer-Dulos. Now, when that sentencing came down, you could hear a pin drop just before Judge Kevin Randolph taking his time to explain his decision beforehand. And I just heard some of you guys on set explaining that just now, saying that he doesn't have to have an opinion on these charges. He doesn't have to even feel that the defendant in this case is guilty. But he does believe that the jury does have reason to believe or that they can make reasonable inferences based off of the facts of this case. And I just heard you mention some of it just now, that Michelle Troconis didn't ask anything of Fotis Dulos when he wasn't home the morning that Jennifer-Dulos, his estranged wife, went missing, that she allegedly picked up his phone to serve as a potential alibi when he was not home that day. And time and time again, the judge saying that too many irregular things happened on that day, on May 24th, 2019, to the point where a reasonable jury could make some inferences about those irregular things, to say that any doubts that they might have had about those patterns were not reasonable. So ultimately, he did make his decision, and when that came down, as we mentioned, it was kind of hard to see Michelle Troconis in this case. You could hear some sniffling, but you really couldn't see anything, no overt act of emotion on either side, really. It was actually kind of stoic in there, Bridget.
Thank you so much, Julia. And yeah, the judge said there were a string of irregular activities that just made him suspect, made the jurors suspect as well. I want to bring in once again attorney Raymond Hassett. He's a former federal prosecutor. He's been following this case very closely. We got to talk about the appeal, because this case is not over just yet. The defense attorney already said he's filing a motion to appeal on a number of issues. For one, I imagine he's going to bring up the language barrier. She was interrogated in English, and that's why she made some conflicting statements. He says, what do you think he stands a chance on appeal? Do you think this is a strong case?
Well, there's going to be a number of issues appealed, and I think the biggest one is going to be with the actual charge of the conspiracy to commit murder, because the evidence was predominantly against Ms. Troconis after it appears that the murder was committed. So the question becomes, is there such a thing and such a legal obligation of conspiring after the event? If it's already occurred, what did she do? So that, yes, she may have taken some of the evidence and hid it, or did something with respect to hindering prosecution. I get that. Those are charges that she's been found guilty of. But the biggest one, the 14.5-year one that was imposed upon her, is that one. So that is going to be an interesting legal, I think, appeal that the defense is going to take. I know they've said that they have, I've heard rumors of somewhere between 25 and 30 different potential appeal topics. It's going to take a while to get through the appellate process, and if that's in fact the case. So it may take a couple of years before we even get to the highest level of an appellate court, which would be our Connecticut Supreme Court, if it goes that way, which it probably will.
And she'll be in custody throughout that time. Is that true? So right now she's at the state prison of Connecticut, standing by. We're going to go one more time out to Julia LeBlanc. Julia, I know when she received her verdict, it was that moment where she put her head in her hand. She was visibly emotional. I believe she gasped. Anything like that today? What was the mood and the emotion like in the room?
As I just mentioned, Bridget, we didn't see that overt act of emotion in the courtroom today, especially when that sentencing came down. Maybe it's because I didn't really have a great view of Michelle Troconis in that moment. But as the day started, I can tell you, I was there when she first walked into the courtroom, the main courtroom, right before the victim impact statements all played out. And you could see Michelle Troconis looked at everyone that came up for her today, looked in the gallery. You could see she was emotional, she was tearful, she was blowing kisses to friends and family members that showed up for her. And in terms of the other side of things, the Jennifer-Dulos family and friends, this was the first time that we have ever heard her children, her 5 children, speaking publicly, speaking courageously, mind you. They are all teenagers, and no matter how anybody feels about this case, you heard it from every single person in that courtroom today, that their hearts are with the Farber-Dulos family, that they are hurting for the children. They are praying for them. They are praying for their grandmother, who has now taken custody of all 5 of those children and taken on that battle. Her friends, Jennifer's friends, who she has had for ages now, many of them from when she was in elementary school, are now supporting and rallying around those 5 Dulos children and really raising them together with Gloria Farber, Jennifer's mom. And hearing from the Dulos children today was very impactful. You could feel their pain about how these last 5 years have really been for them. They are all, as I mentioned, teenagers, children. One of them was 8 years old at the time when this happened. And the eldest, I know, as Bridget was just saying, was asking, because of that pain, for at least the maximum for each of the 5 children, to sort of give some kind of justice for what they have experienced, which is just sheer agony over the last 5 years. And we also did, I should mention, we did hear from Michelle Troconis' daughter and Michelle Troconis herself. I mentioned Michelle Troconis' daughter because she is the same age as one of the 2 of the Dulos children. She, before the judge handed down that sentencing, pleading with him to please don't take my mother away from me. She said she is my role model, and I'm begging you to please, have some grace and don't make this the harshest sentence that you could. And we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Yeah, that was very moving to me too, Julia. And I noticed the judge, Kevin Randolph, was listening particularly intently to those remarks, just hearing children. That carries a lot of weight.
Certainly.
Well, that is what we know about the sentencing of Michelle Troconis. She will spend the next 14 and a half years behind bars and then 5 following years on probation. That's if she does not win on appeal. I'm sure we're going to be talking with you very closely, Raymond, as that appeal process plays out. We appreciate your perspective very much. We will have much